And welcome to Cooking with Mrs. Bodine. Please join me in making lovely yogurt bagels. They're made with non-fat yogurt. That sounds kind of gross, but it really isn't. It's delicious. That's right out of the oven, nice and fresh, and they don't take very long to make. I've washed my hands thoroughly with soap and water, and I have measured out all the ingredients to make this a little bit easier for you so that you can keep right on going with me. The first thing we put in here is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Remember to loosen up your flour and to either take a spatula or, I've lost my knife, just go straight across it so it's nice and even, okay? So that's the first thing we put in a bowl. Second thing we do is put in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Make sure it's the baking powder and not the baking soda. You want the can. Also make sure it's a teaspoon and it's not a tablespoon. Okay, we make that mistake a lot in class, so let's not make it for your breakfast. So remember, this has a little tool to level it off. So here's one. This one is nice and fresh, so there are no clumps in this one at all. Please close up your ingredients as soon as you're done with it. And the next thing, it calls for a little kosher salt. It says a quarter to a half teaspoon. I'm going to do this a few times, and that will be fine. Then, but you can measure it out. Some people like more salt than others, so I don't like a lot of salt. I also find that the flavor is improved when we add at least a tablespoon of sugar. That's not in the original recipe. I just added that, so feel free to experiment with what your tastes are. Okay? Once these are mixed with a whisk, and the reason I'm mixing with the whisk is to make sure that that baking powder gets completely absorbed in all of our batter. Okay? Next thing we do is I've measured out in a liquid measuring cup. It wants to be eye level, so you can read that 1 cup mark. I just used a spoon and my yogurt container, and I spooned it right in. And you use a rubber scraper or spatula and just get it all out. Okay? There we go. Since my hands are washed, I can use this. We take a wooden spoon and we gently mix it. They say the batter's on the crumbly side. You can use a slightly deeper bowl if you want, so you don't have this riding up to the top. I just did it for the sake of a demo, so that you can see what I'm doing. When you get to this point, I would simply scrape off your spoon, because you don't want to leave all this nice batter. And bring this all in, and I'm going to use my hands to mix this. Okay? It'll be very cold. It will surprise you how cold this is, and that's of course because my yogurt is cold, right? I would just use one hand. And you're going to mix it up till that yogurt picks up all the flour. You certainly don't want to over mix it, but you do want to have a nice ball of dough in here by the time you get done. Doesn't take very long, because this makes 7 small ones. I use my miniature donut pans for this because it helps keep their shape. And if you don't have a donut pan, doesn't matter at all. You can roll them up and just simply put them on a cookie sheet and give them a little space. That's maybe too much. These are the miniature donut pans I use, and they give us a nice shape. So let's get some of this excess flour away, as long as it doesn't stick to my counter. We're going to roll it into a log, and then we're going to cut that in 6 or 7 pieces. 7 is about perfect for these muffin tins. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on my counter, but I just got to gauge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks about right. Okay, so then it's very beautiful soft batter. and we roll it. We make them into 7 pieces, okay? Now let's spray our pan. I'm going to do that over. I always spray my pans over the kitchen sink so that I don't get it on the floor and don't make it slippery for the next poor person who doesn't know my floor is slippery. I'm going to take our first one. Make sure your hands are well floured. And I find this works really well if I put them in my hand a long way for just a little while, even sideways, until you start feeling a nice cylinder form take shape. Easier to do it on your hand for some reason than on the counter, I think. So that feels like it's about the right shape. I wouldn't add too much flour. And if you did not have the cookie, if you did not have the donut pan, you simply pinch them together. Okay? You can even hold it up and pinch them a little bit and put them on your tray. I'm going to put them in my little donut pan. Let's put it a little closer so you can see, because it's a lot of fun. And already sitting here, this dough becomes softer and it has an airy texture to it because the baking powder is beginning to work. Once the fluids and the acid from the yogurt are in here, it starts to do its job. Okay, if you're not sure if they're long enough, lay them in for a minute and see if they'll make it. But it's probably about the length of your hand. You also don't want to make them too thin because then they might not look as good. So pinch them either beforehand or once they're in the pan. There's no right or wrong way. I like it better between my hands. I can feel when it gets that nice velvety feel to it. Okay, this one we're going to put right in here. Pinch together. The next step is to take an egg and crack your egg in a little custard cup. Okay, make sure that your egg does not roll off the counter. So I put it in an extra, either a measuring cup or an extra custard cup so it doesn't roll off. Once you've cracked your egg, you simply take it and you come out of it to bring some air into it and mix the egg yolk and the egg yolk together carefully. Once you have done that, you can take a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, you could probably just use your finger. That's a lot of egg going in there, which is why I'm glad we sprayed the pan. So if you don't have an egg brush, a pastry brush, simply use your fingers. It's a little messier, but it's doable. It's always a way to do it in baking. And that keeps us learning and being creative, which is the fun part. Okay, it needs just a very thin wash of egg, all right? Then you can have a choice. You can put cinnamon, sugar, whatever you like. I have some everything but the bagel from Trader Joe's that I really like. My house smells like a bake shop when I put this on. I will do 2 of those. I have some poppy seeds. If you didn't have poppy seeds, you could use chia seeds. It's the same look. Not quite the same taste, but I can't tell much difference. But it's nice to have some variety to offer. And I love pumpkin seeds. So I've ground some up under here, but I think the whole ones work perfectly well in here. You can do a mixture of some, if you want to cut them up a little bit with a knife, you can. But I think they hold perfectly well for that. They're going to go into the oven for 25 minutes at 375.